I think I have the power to end this war, and I think it's going very well. But today I heard, oh, well, we weren't invited. Well, you've been there for 3 years. You should have ended it 3 years. You should have never started it. You could have made a deal.
That is right. That is a conflict that could have been ended 3 years ago. But here we are in 2025, February 24th. I am recording this on the 3rd year of the conflict in Ukraine between Russia and Ukraine. Now, I have had the interesting point of view, because I have been living in Russia during all of this. I have lived through the mobilization. I have lived through the 2 big major battles, Avdiivka and Bakhmut. I've lived inside of Russia, so I got to see a lot of the captured equipment from NATO, which I'm going to show you some of those videos later. But I wanted to talk to you about what it's like living in a Siberian town, because if you don't know, Siberia is actually the region that gives the most fighters for Russia. And it's not only in this conflict, it's just historically Siberia is the land of warriors. So I'm going to be talking about life in Russia during these 3 years during the war in Ukraine. Now, in case you don't know how this started, there was actually a speech given by the president of the Russian Federation, President Vladimir Putin, announcing that there was going to be a special military operation. And I'm going to call it a war now, because a lot of people are scared to call it a war, but actually it is a war because of the so many escalations from the NATO side. You can't really call it a special military operation when it's a war against a beast on one side, right? Like, come on, this is the reality. Let's look at the president's speech.
Народные республики Донбасса обратились к России с просьбой о помощи. Мною принято решение о проведении специальной военной операции. Ее цель – защита людей, которые на протяжении 8 лет подвергаются издевательствам, геноциду со стороны киевского режима. И для этого мы будем стремиться к демилитаризации и денацификации Украины, а также преданию суду тех, кто совершил многочисленные кровавые преступления против мирных жителей, в том числе и граждан Российской Федерации.
By the time that message of the president was announced, I had already bought my tickets to go to Russia, and I wasn't going to change my mind. And so I flew to Russia, and well, here we are now. One of the biggest news that happened while I was living in Russia, while I lived in Russia, was the announcement of the mobilization. This kind of drew so much media attention. You know, I myself actually got to see the people of this town head off. You know, just like in other countries, I know my family sent me off to war. We also did it here. Here are some photos from that happening here in Sludanka. Now, what's interesting is that when the news hit, it really blew people's minds, as if mobilization was something new. We have mobilization in the United States. There's an M device for units that are mobilized, reserves that are mobilized. And I don't know, as a military man, it didn't really seem like a big deal. Now, the amount of men that ended up being mobilized, of course, was a massive one. But again, these were reserves. And this was the clip that really drew a lot of attention. It was actually the president of the Russian Federation, President Vladimir Putin, announcing this.
Считаю необходимым поддержать предложение Министерства обороны и Генерального штаба о проведении в Российской Федерации частичной мобилизации. Повторю, речь идет именно о частичной мобилизации. То есть призыву на военную службу будут подлежать только граждане, которые в настоящий момент состоят в запасе. И прежде всего те, кто проходил службу в рядах вооруженных сил, имеет определенные военно-учетные специальности и соответствующий опыт. Призванные на военную службу перед отправкой в части в обязательном порядке будут проходить дополнительную военную подготовку с учетом опыта специальной военной операции. Указ о частичной мобилизации подписан.
Like I said, after that happened, after those news just started spreading everywhere in the West, you got to see the information war beginning, right? Just Russia pumping information out, the West pumping information out. I, as a Westerner immigrant living in Russia, I always felt like, okay, there has to be a middle ground. The magnitude of this conflict was massive. You know, you need a huge amount of men to fight such a huge front line. And to me, it wasn't a surprise that there had to be a mobilization of men. This is essentially gearing up for war. And I don't know. I feel that people thought that Russia did it because it lacked men. No, it never lacked men, right? This entire time that I've been living in Russia, the Russian people have volunteered even themselves. You know, they weren't drafted to go fight. Now it's all of these lies that were told in the beginning have kind of unfolded and just fell like a deck of cards on the people. A lot of the things that were lied about in the beginning of this conflict were later exposed. The truth just has a way of coming out. So like the troop shortage, the weapons shortage that happened all the time. I lived in Russia during this entire time and none of that was happening. You just knew that Russia had the fight in them. And we're going on now for 3 years and it doesn't really feel like Russia is going to slow down. All right, we know that there's talks between Russia and the United States to end the conflict, and we're going to get into that later. But just so you know, when the mobilization happened, there was a lot of people talking about that it was a shortage of men. This was not the case. They had the men, they just had to deploy them into action. Because I've lived here during these 3 years, I actually had the ability to fly to Moscow on multiple occasions and see some of the captured NATO equipment. And well, here are some clips from my trip to Moscow. I didn't, again, expect to document these things. These are just things that happened during these 3 years. So this Abrams was definitely knocked out and then later further destroyed, because there's no way that it would be in this condition. Interesting, you can see that the 50 cal is up there and the 240 machine gun is still mounted on there. These are two of the most common weapons that we have. I used those myself. So this tank was actually it was armed to the teeth, you know, like it had everything going for it. And this is what it gets for being in the wrong conflict, in my opinion, unfortunately. Now, when the Leopard 2 was captured, there was bounties on these things. They were paying for the destruction of these. The Russian military was actually putting bounties on this type of equipment. I don't think that the end game for them, for the Germans, was to have their weapons paraded again. But here it is. In its miserable state, destroyed. Maybe this one's still operational, but it seems like we never learn. Here is a assault breacher vehicle. Most of our vehicles has a mount to put a machine gun on top. And no matter if the vehicle is not for fighting or an infantry vehicle, it's going to have some sort of offense. This vehicle here is used as a wrecker to pull out all the other things that get stuck or blown up. And it's in pretty good state. It's in a good state, so it means that they probably abandoned it and it was later picked up. I also took the time to document some things in my hometown here in Slyudanka. Now, there's a big difference between living in a big city where you don't actually notice a conflict like this, of this magnitude, but in a small town when you have so many warriors going off to fight, you do get exposed to veterans coming back. and we also take casualties. But I want to show you some clips from my local streets, from how the recruitment works here, also the memorials to these men. It's very important for you to understand that I am not Russian, but I am a veteran, and so I am married to a Russian woman. My father-in-law and my brother-in-law, they are veterans of the Russian military, so a part of my heart is with them. And I just want this conflict to end. 3 years, I don't want to be here talking about it for a fourth year, but I just wanted to document what I was feeling on this historical day. One of the most common things you're going to be seeing in a small town is recruitment advertisements, and you're going to be seeing them all over town. I'm going to be driving around town showing you the different locations where they put these things up. These are the advertisements that get men to fight. Me being a United States Marine war veteran of the Afghanistan war, I remember seeing many commercials talking about joining the Marines to go fight in a desert somewhere. Well, that was a different type of war. This advertisement is the equivalent of those commercials back in the West. Now, besides advertisements for recruitments, you're also going to see in a small town billboards in remembrance of the people who died in this war. And there's quite a couple down the road, and while we're driving, I'll try to record them for you. But just understand that just like in any other country I've seen, for instance, in the United States, we also do this. We also remember our fallen, and Russia is no exception. With everything that I've said and all of the news coming out now, I hope that the United States and Russia can come to an agreement and make peace. I know America, the United States, has nothing to do with this conflict directly. It was a proxy war and it went absolutely bad, thank God, because we don't need a weak Russia. We need a strong Russia, a strong United States, and we need them to be friends once again. This might make a lot of people angry. Maybe a lot of you have a huge distaste for the United States, but it's better for world peace if we are friends. And don't forget, I am still a United States citizen. I still do love my country, where I come from. My mother is there, my family is there. I don't bite the hand that feeds me, but I am here in Russia. My kids, I've said before, will be born here in Russia. My wife is Russian, and I do love the country in which I live in right now, and I want there to be peace. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave all your comments and down in the comment section, and I'll see you hopefully soon. I never expected a lot of equipment to have this flag, right? And actually, the state in which some of these vehicles are in, it looks like they were just given away. I'm going to use this one as an example. It's an engineering vehicle, but it does have a mount for offensive adaptation, I guess. Another thing is, this wrecker here is in absolutely perfect condition. It's basically left over by the Ukrainians. This thing's worth a lot of money, but it ended up here, right? It's an absolute shame. This is also American. These two weapons are American, but the one thing that everybody's looking for is that Abrams, and we're going to look at it right now. We actually got to come in and get a little bit close and personal with it. Let's go look at our taxpayer dollars. This is the tail end of the Abrams. It is absolutely devastated. It had the 240 and the 50 cal mounted on top. You can tell that this vehicle perhaps hit an IED or a landmine, obviously, because its tracks are gone, but it's blown to pieces at the top. So that means after it was disabled, it had to be droned or it had to be shelled by artillery. This is the fate of almost any vehicle that gets hit in the war right now. Once the tracks are gone, the drones are coming in and the artillery is going to finish it off. Nothing's going to survive unless it's left behind like these vehicles, right? These vehicles were left behind. These vehicles were left somewhere and they were later captured. The Abrams was actually popped out somewhere. They had to use it because, you know, they need to use their weapons, and you saw the fate that it met. Further ahead, we're going to look at the Abrams right now. Let's go. Oh, sorry, the Leopard. This is history repeating itself. I told you guys before that in the 1940s, the Germans were marched in Moscow, and now the Germans is lost again, and the Russians are parading their weapons just like they did in the 1940s. History are repeating itself. This is the famed Leopard. This is the German engineering that everybody was talking about. Let's look at the front end of it. This one seems to be in better condition. What does that say? Maybe this one didn't even make it to the fight. Maybe this one's crew just left it and was later captured. This is what you're going to see in battle. You're going to have those crews that I talked about, that where you have one coward and infects the whole unit. This is what happens in war. It is not total bravery by all parts. For the most part, this one has its tracks. You know, can you explain what happened? I can't tell you what happened, but I can speculate that this weapon didn't even see the combat it was meant to see. Here it is, the Leopard 2. And then I'll do my outro and that's it.